folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Another hot, sultry day here in the Ozarks. Was supposed to get a bunch of rain. Looks like the daddy sheep's coming over to say hi to us. We were supposed to have a rainy day. Yesterday they said it was a 90% chance of rain all day today. And guess what? We've had none. And probably aren't going to get any today either. But that's the joy of living in the Ozarks, because the weather changes by the minute practically. Been working in the garden this morning. We also have been canning this morning, put up some pickles, and we're very thankful of that, especially because this is our first year garden at this place. And for those of you, whether you're just starting out or you're an expert, your first few years are always the toughest. You're trying to work out the kinks, the bugs, get that soil ready to where it needs to be for gardening. And it usually takes 2 to 3 years and before you really kind of catch your groove. And usually by your 5th year, the soil is really where it needs to be and good and fertile, and you're starting to really produce an excellent garden. So because of that, this year we planted a much larger garden than we may have needed, knowing that it probably wouldn't produce as much, which that's what's happened. It hasn't produced as much as we hoped, but we're still getting a lot in. And we took this morning and did some canning and put up some stuff. Also, what we've been doing today, and that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about, is we've been doing inventory. We've been doing inventory of our preps. This is very important for you to do, especially as your food preps, especially food preps, really start growing. You need to, on occasion, do inventory. There's a few reasons why you do this, and for those of you that's worked in maybe restaurants and stuff, you understand what inventory is and why you should do it. But you want to know, number one, what you have. If you're like me and like most preppers, you're out there when you go grocery shopping or when you're out, you're buying a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there, and it kind of builds up. And it's very easy, if you don't keep track of it all, to kind of forget what you have. And then you look back and you're like, oh my goodness, I've got, 2 cans of tomatoes and I've got 800 cans of green beans. So you want to keep track of what you have so that you know, as you're going out and shopping and adding to it, what you have in your food stocks. You also want to do an inventory to kind of inspect the food, and other things too, not just your food. Because, especially with food, bugs get in it, mice could get in it, and it doesn't really matter how you store it or where you store it. There's always a chance that you could get bugs. I mean, sure, if you put it in a Mylar bag, in a 5-gallon bucket, or it's sealed up in some way, that's great, and I encourage to do that, but there's always a chance that it could be compromised. So doing an inspection every 6 months or so is really a great way to stay on top of that, so that you make sure that your food is in good working order. I remember reading a story a couple of years ago of a family that had purchased from one of these freeze-dried survival food companies. They had purchased like a year or two's worth of food, this big package, spent several $1,000s. And they stored it away in their garage. And it was there for a few years, and they decided, hey, let's crack some of that open and see what it's like. And so they went out there and did that, and it was all bad. And just about all their food had been compromised in some way. And I believe mostly it was because it was stored in a very hot garage and it spoiled. And so all their thousands of dollars of food that they had purchased was basically down the drain. And you don't want that. You don't want to put all that work and all that money and creating this kind of false sense of security that you have a 2-3 year supply of food, and then when you actually need it, you go in there and you find that a portion of it or maybe even all of it is no good. So do your inventories and inspect your food to make sure that the food is still edible and it's not getting an infestation. You keep the food rotated because most of our food, we do have long-term food storage items, but most of our food is a working pantry. So we're adding to it and using it. So we want to make sure that it's rotated. And these are all good practices that you should do for your food storage, because that's a very important thing. And like I said, if something happens and you don't realize that it got bugs in it, or the cans are starting to rust, or some kind of packaging cracked or busted open, and then now your food is no good. And that's certainly not something you want to do. So again, make sure you do regular inspections and inventory of your food supplies. And you really want to do that with a lot of things, because even though some things have an unlimited shelf life that aren't food, but you still want to check that kind of stuff. Fuels, gasolines, anything like that you want to check. Make sure your tools are in working order. These are things that you should be doing on your homestead anyways, but especially now, so that you stay on top of it. Speaking of tools, I spoke again with a business in town, in the nearest town that we go to, and they do equipment rental, and they do sell heavy equipment and stuff. And I was talking to one of the managers there, and he said that they're having a real hard problem getting in parts for their heavy equipment. He said because of all this shutdown and the economy and the virus and everything, that they're having a real hard time getting parts to repair this stuff. And so it's just one more sign of what's going on, that I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. And I really think that a lot of the things that are in the news today, not just today, but recently, are becoming, even though they're maybe important, they're also becoming a distraction for the very much larger looming danger that's kind of lurking in the midst, that's about ready to hit us. And that's much more food shortages, much more shortages of just supplies, because we're starting to see that more and more, where companies are just running out of stuff. And there's no real excuse for that. We should be able to produce plenty, but because of the economy, because of little ram, because of the economy, because of the shutdown, because of the fear of the virus, we're seeing much more shortages. It's hurting the economy, and almost daily we're hearing about businesses shutting down and companies shutting down stores and going bankrupt, and the dollar is just losing more and more value every day as we spend and spend, and the Fed continues to release trillions of dollars. So folks, continue with your preps, but remember, today's lesson class is to inspect your preps, inventory them, do proper rotation of your foods, especially if it's foods that you're using, your canned foods and stuff, so that you're not using the newest stuff first. A lot of people kind of forget that, and you really want to do these things and get into the habit of doing them, so that your stuff lasts as long as it needs to last, and that you don't have to worry about some kind of bugs getting into it, or mice or whatever, because you're checking it on a regular basis. So just remember to do that. Check your foods, get them organized, get your prep stuff organized. Try to find a place in your garage, your barn, your house. It really needs to be climate controlled, because even stuff like freeze-dried and dehydrated food can go bad, or it lessens its lifespan if it's in a hot building. So if you're putting it in a garage or a barn, try to make sure that it's there's an air conditioner in there, window unit or something to keep it cool, because you can certainly lessen the lifespan of it, and it can even spoil it. You don't want to have this dependency, depending on all this food that you have, and then when you go to need it, it's no good. So remember that, folks, and continue stocking up, because right now I think we're still at just a lull in the craziness. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.